If you clicked on this video, then you know we're about to start chapter 2 on what Starfield gets wrong, and I'm assuming you watched chapter 1 on what Starfield gets right, in where I praised Starfield in my opinion for what Bethesda got right with Starfield. But with that being said, even though I love Starfield and I enjoy my time with Starfield, the fact of the matter is there are problems with the game. And I understand the constructive criticism where it stems from. That is why the player base is quite mixed on the game. Even though the majority of the players are enjoying it, we have to be fair and we have to look at what the game gets wrong. Now, these are my opinions and they are based on my personal experiences with the game. At the same time, I'm also looking at the discussions and perceptions and perspectives of the various other players and gamers that I have had these discussions with, because I mean that's the beauty of these discussion videos, is that it gives me insight into the opinions and perceptions and perspectives of other players, because everyone's mileage seems to be different with this game. But with that being said, let's get into what Starfield gets wrong. Okay, let's start it off with the most controversial gaming mechanic that has been highly criticized by everybody since the game's launch, and that is the space traversal and space exploration system. Now, the game is divided into 3 segments or sandboxes. That is your main cities such as New Atlantis and Aquila. Then you have your space sandbox, also known as the fast travel system. And thirdly, you have your vast number of planets, which consists of your exploration, which is optional, which consists of your procedurally generated content such as your POIs, as well as handcrafted dungeons and things like that. Now, for this topic, we are talking about the space sandbox, and in particular the discussions that I have seen and reviews where people are saying that, unlike previous Bethesda games like Skyrim, where you are on the main quest path, you have these random encounters or special encounters that take you off the beaten path, and it turns into its own adventures where you are side questing and things like that, and then finding yourself again onto the main quest, and that it's all interconnected because there was a main map. Now, Starfield does not have a main map in particular, it has these different sandboxes. Now, I agree with this, but I also disagree with it. And the reason why I disagree with it is that these special encounters and random encounters are there, and they are situated within the space sandbox. For example, when you grab jump to a particular solar system or planet, you find yourself either entangled in a ship battle with space pirates, you are meeting interesting characters, having interesting conversations, or you meet grandma who's giving you food and feeding you, or you come across derelict spaceships or space stations that when you board them, it turns into a horror show, which is amazing. So these encounters are there. The problem is that within the space sandbox, and the space sandbox itself, it's disjointed. And why is it disjointed? It's disjointed because Bethesda decided to make space exploration a fast travel system where you are constantly sitting behind UI and loading screens, pressing buttons, fast traveling here and there. Now, how can this be fixed? In my opinion, it can be fixed in a simple way. Hear me out. First of all, the graph drive system that we currently have, it's perfect. Jumping from one solar system to the next with that loading screen where the tear opens up in space, that is awesome. I think that works, because at the end of the day, Starfield is not a space sim, it is not No Man's Sky. But the moment that you grab jump to a particular solar system, Bethesda should have given the player the freedom then to traverse and travel, control their spaceship to travel within that solar system from one planet to the next. Now, that mechanic is within the game. We know that you can travel from planet to planet in a given solar system, but it takes 7 hours. Now they need to cut this down to 5, 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes max, right? Where the player has the freedom to fly the ship in space from planet to planet in a given solar system. And while they are traversing and traveling in this manner, they are experiencing these random encounters and special encounters, coming across these space battles, these derelict ships, meeting more interesting characters that gives them interesting quests and so forth. That is how you fix it. Now remember what I said, at the end of the day, Starfield is not a space sim. So we also don't need to be traveling to and from planets and manually landing our ships onto these planets. I don't think the game needs that, especially after I heard a very interesting take that many people that played Elite Dangerous, they left that game. Why? Because they were intimidated by the ship landing mechanics, and that is pretty hard, and it takes a lot of time. Because Starfield is not a space sim, we don't need that. But what Bethesda should have given the players was that freedom once you get into that particular solar system to traverse and control the ship from planet to planet, and that would have made the gameplay loop more coherent. I would have made the 3 sandboxes feel more interconnected. There would have been less load screens and fast traveling within the space sandbox, and it would have made the game feel more interconnected. That's my opinion. Let me know if you agree with that. But with that being said, let's move on to the next thing that Starfield gets wrong. Okay, now we're going to talk about the third sandbox, and that is the procedural generated content. Now this is a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, the procedural system does its job quite fine. It does it perfectly well. The manner and how fast they can spit out these different biomes on planets and these POIs, it's amazing. Right? I'm not really sure how it works, but it was on a timing system of sorts. On the other hand, given that Starfield is built upon a system that is dependent on this procedural generated content, and given how big they went with Starfield, with all these solar systems and things like that, I feel like Bethesda should have doubled down with the handcrafted content as well. And I'll explain now why. So I'll use the example of the abandoned cryo lab, right? And I'll call this a dungeon because when you go into that lab, it plays out like a dungeon. And the first time you experience this, which I recently experienced, it is an amazing experience, and you really feel like you've discovered something special. And you will feel that with a lot of these facilities and that the first time you discover them, you'll feel like you came across something special. Now what the procedural system does is, once you leave that planet, you go to another random planet, the procedural system then picks up that, hey, you were at that cryo lab, is now going to populate it as another POI on another random planet. So now if you're a person that goes to these random planets and you go investigate every POI that pops up, you're going to be sorely disappointed, unfortunately, because now it throws up that cryo lab again. And after the second, third, fourth time that you experience that cryo lab, it no longer feels special. That discovery you had the first time no longer feels special, and that is how the procedural system works against Starfield. That is why I say Bethesda should have, given the scale of Starfield, they should have doubled down on the amount of handcrafted settlements, set pieces and elements, because they do it so well that the first time you discover these facilities, and they are so well done, they feel like dungeons and they are so much fun. But like I said, when you experience the same thing 2, 3, 4 times, it becomes very repetitive and it takes away that special feeling. So I understand the criticism that it faces here, and hopefully with the expansion Shattered Space, Bethesda introduces more handcrafted content. They need to, because they got this wrong here. Honestly, they got it wrong here. But with that being said, let's move on to the next thing that Starfield gets wrong. Yeah, man, the intro and the first couple of hours of the main campaign is the weakest point of the game, to me personally. Now you can disagree, but you have to admit it's a really slow burn. And in chapter 1 on what Starfield gets right, I did say that within the setting and the theme, the main story works, right, but it misses a couple of beats. And where those beats are missed is in the intro and the first couple of hours. In the intro and the first couple of hours, it feels like a long ass tutorial of learning the different mechanics and systems of the game, right? And it feels like a glorified fetch me quest for those first couple of hours. Now don't get me wrong, the main campaign gets good, it really gets good, and once it gets going, it gets going. But a lot of the amazing set pieces that we start to see in Act 2 and 3, they should have utilized more also in the first act. Because for a game that does not utilize or make use of glorified cutscenes, CGI cinematics, or cinematic QTEs like many of these other big AAA studios do, the writing had to be really strong here. Or they at least should have shifted around things, to capture the audiences. Yes, they built some mystery around these artifacts, but it wasn't really capturing. For example, look at the Crete facility. Now, for me personally, when you go to the Crete facility, that was the best part for me in the intro. When I got to that set piece, man, I was just enthralled. I was engrossed. I was fully immersed in that setting, because it told the story apart from the main quest that I had to take out the Crimson Fleet. And while I'm doing this, I am completely immersed in reading every piece of information I can find on slates and computers talking about Xeno warfare and the research they were doing there, and who was going to be the highest bidder between the UC and the Freestar collectives, and also how the main scientists did not want to evacuate his team, and that's why they did now, because of the Crimson Fleet that took over the entire facility. And at the end, before you exit the facility to the roof to take on the Crimson Fleet, you actually find the main scientists that you've been reading about through all these slates. And it's those little details, man, that makes these set pieces really shine, and it's really the strongest point of Starfield. And I feel like Starfield should have utilized more of those kinds of set pieces in the beginning of the game, in the middle, and throughout, and it would have been a much more coherent and more amazing experience. But for what it is currently now, those first couple of hours does feel like a glorified Fetch Me quest, and the writing should have been really strong there to capture the audiences and the players. So I can understand people that are playing 3 hours of that and they just play the main campaign, they would get bored, and they're calling it glorified Fetch quest, which is warranted. But when it gets going, it does get going. That is what Starfield got wrong in that first few couple of hours of the main campaign, man. Now, you can disagree with me, but man, it really is a slow burn. With that being said, let's move on to the next thing that Starfield gets wrong. Yeah, Starfield lacks edge, man. Starfield lacks that type of edge that other games have. And I know it's a creative decision or direction that they took. And you could say I'm not picking, which I probably am not picking here. But to be honest, if you are somebody that likes edgy games like Cyberpunk and Shadowrunner, things, those type of games, you're not going to have a fun time with Starfield. Starfield is not for you because it's not an edgy game. I cannot recall once when NPC dropped an F-bomb, At times it feels like I'm playing a PG-rated game, even though it's not. And yes, there are edgy topics that they address in dialogue, that they address in quests and things like that. But this is the same problem I sort of had with Hogwarts Legacy, that although it was great and fun, at times the dialogue and the world felt like it was made for a 12-year-old, the way they would speak and things like that. So, but that's not to take away of how great that game was. And the same here with Starfield. But if you look at a city like Neon City, which is supposed to be the cyber-esque type of city, right? That is a drug den, There's two gangs that are prominent within that city. When you go to Neon City, although it looks beautiful, you see none of these elements. Like even when you go into Ibside, which is supposed to be the slums of Neon City, you're not seeing any poor NPCs sitting on the ground, doing drugs and things like that. Like you don't see that. It's not on display. You don't see these two gangs, like groups of them, or in certain sections of the map. You don't see that unless you do the particular side quest that relates to these two gangs. When you look at the NPCs especially, right, they are no different from the NPCs that fill these cities from that of the ones on New Atlantis. So there's no distinctive features between the two. Also, when it comes to edge, there's no edgy clothing. When you look at the outfits, there's no edginess to it. It's just, it feels bland, to be honest. And I wish the game had more edginess when it came to the outfits, especially on the NPCs. There's like no tattoos and things like that. And I know, as I'm saying this, it sounds like I'm nitpicking, but I think it would have added to the immersion, and it would have added diversity, especially when you look at Neon City. But yeah, man, if you are into those types of edgy games, you're not going to like this year. And at the end of the day, it is a creative and artistic style that was chosen to go with, but they could have added that in here, especially for Neon City, and that is what they get wrong, unfortunately. With that being said, let's move on to the next topic. Yeah, talking about edginess, man. Starfield really missed an opportunity with Andreja. Honestly, man. Andreja could have been Starfield's equivalent to Mass Effect's Jack, without a doubt. She is one of the best written companions in this game with a backstory. And spoiler alert, she's part of the House of Varun and she's a double agent. She's been spying on Constellation and sending information, but the fact that they gave her the same model compass as the rest of the companions. By the way, what the hell's up with that, Bethesda? Why does all the companions share the same model compass? I get why Barrett, Sarah, and Sam would have the same model compass, but Andreja? Now, yes, Andreja's on a path of self-discovery, on finding a home for herself and making Constellation a home. But at the same time, she's a double agent. When you meet her the first time, she's literally shooting somebody like crazy, even though the guys did. Like, she clearly has that edginess to her, yet they didn't utilize it. They could have given her a different model compass and she would have stood so much more out from the rest of the companions. Yes, the companions are well written. The loyalty quests are not the best thing in Starfield, but I mean, it's just such a missed opportunity, man. Such a missed opportunity with what they could have done with Andreja, honestly. And yeah, man, let me know if you agree with that, because mommy Andreja, man, it could have been so epic if she was the one that had a different model compass while she's still discovering herself and finding a home for herself outside of the House of Varun, because the House of Varun has this mystery, dark occult nature to them. And since she comes from that, you would expect her model compass to not be the same as the rest of the Constellation, because especially when you have her as a companion in different side quests and faction quests, she has some pretty badass lines, that she gives off, that she doesn't take any shit. But yet you give her the same model compass as the rest of the companions. I don't understand, man. I don't understand, Bethesda. God damn it, the writing was on the wall, man. The writing was on the wall. But anyway, guys, I digress. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you like Andreja's character as she is? Do you think she should have had a different morale system? Let me know in the comments down below. And that's the end of what Starfield gets wrong, man. Now, I know there's a lot of other things, but I'm trying to keep this video short, and I'm putting the biggest things, in my opinion, that they got wrong within this video. Let me know in the comments down below what I missed, and let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with what I've raised here? Would I go as far as saying that this is a regression or a step back from previous Bethesda games? No, I won't go that far, because it's a new IP, and given the foundation that they laid down, I can only see if they give more quality content, more handcrafted content throughout the years. I only see it getting better. And I do think that they can pull the 2.0 overhaul that CDPR was able to do with Cyberpunk. I see Bethesda being able to do that here, and Bethesda has to listen to the reviews. Even though the majority of the reviews is positive, like I said in my previous video, the negative reviews cannot be ignored. The constructive criticism, where it is given, it has to be taken to heart, and Bethesda needs to make a change. They can change the space traversal and space exploration system, because it's something that is there. They can just overhaul it, like the same way that Cyberpunk did with vehicle combat. I think the same thing can be done here. They can also add more handcrafted content with a new expansion. We know that the DLSS update is now coming to Steam Beta, so I only see good things happening for Starfield going forward. But given the current state, yes, the player count is dropping. Understandably so. People have either had their fill of the game, and because we're in such a great year of games that there are so many great games coming out, people have varieties. And we have our multiplayer games as well. So people might be taking a break from Starfield. They might be waiting for that DLSS update. They might be waiting for more patches. They might be waiting for more content. So the players will return, but it's also dependent on the changes that Bethesda brings to the game. But with that being said, guys, that's it for this video. I hope it didn't go on too long. I tried to keep it as short as possible. Anyway, this might be my last video for quite some time on the channel, so do the YouTube thing. I do appreciate the support, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Stay safe out there and happy gaming. Rampage out. Peace.